Okay, so let's see where we're at with our rig over here. We've already done the legs, the arms, the head, so we pretty much just have the torso left to deal with. And right now we have this group, the torso group that we use for rigging, but most of the joints are still part of a different hierarchy, which is over here in the main rig folder. And as you can see, we're very quickly emptying this folder over here. So at one point, the main rig is just going to disappear, and we're going to have everything in their own groups down there. So let's work on sorry, unifying both folders together. And I had totally forgotten that if you need a second items list, there's a much faster way of getting one, which is just by going to layout, palettes, and you should have here an item list. So we're just going to bring that one up instead of having to create one by hand as we did the last time. Okay, so here we are. So we're going to have our torso folder open over here and our main rig folder open over here. And let's see how we go about things. The first thing I'm going to do is organize the stuff that is in here, because right now there's just a bunch of things thrown in there and nothing makes much sense. So let's create some additional locators, group locators, and we're gonna call this one group center. Let's call it spine IK rig. And we're going to set our drop action to match. And let's see where our torso is. It's right here. It seems to be at the root of the first joint. So let's just make sure this guy is matched accordingly. I'm going to make him a child of the torso rig. So I can see that it has some difference in values. So we're probably gonna reset everything before continuing and make sure there's no hidden transforms in there. And now I'm gonna duplicate it, and I'm gonna call this one spine joint. So let's see what's up with the IK rig. So let's see what we have. We have the up vector for the spine. So I'm gonna place this guy as part of the IK rig. Then we have two fall-offs, which are not really part of it, but yeah, let's say that they're part of the IK rig too. The IK curve, we should make sure we're in setup mode just in case. Let's put that in there too, and we see that this happens. So let's leave our IK curve for last, because we're gonna have to do some changes to it. Then we have our upper spine deformation hierarchy. Let's see what that is. It's this deformer over here, and it just has some constraints. So what I'm going to do is take my spine joints and duplicate that group locator and call this one spine deformer locators, and we're going to put these two guys in there. And then we have a constraint here for the hips control, which is this control over here. Then we have this guy for the upper part, and then we have the actual controls for the torso. So I think these three hierarchies should be part of another group locator that we're going to call spine controls. So let's take all of that. Oops, not the IK curve though. these guys, and put them in the spine controls group. This one, I'm keeping it there just to know where I'm going to put the stuff that I'm going to bring from the main rig hierarchy in a second. So let's look at our spine IK curve issue. So if I try moving this guy, right now he's parented over to the torso group, which as you can see is right here, and we're trying to move it into the IK group, which is actually using the exact same location. But when we move it, we get this really nasty side effect. So let's undo everything and let's see what we're dealing with. So we have our normalizing folder and a node here, a matrix compose node. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my spline IK curve, go to the channels list, and turn back on the inheritance, because that might be the cause of the problem. So let's do that. Let's turn everything back on. As you can see, we get a double transform over there. I'm going to move it now to the IK rig, and I'm going to turn everything back off. And it goes back into the position it had, but it's now part of the appropriate folder, appropriate group locator that I wanted to be the parent for this curve. So it looks like that solved the problem. All we have to do is turn back on the inheritances so that when you change the parent, the object can inherit the transformations of this new parent, which in this case were still the same, but that was important for the purpose of moving this guy into a different point in the hierarchy. And once he's moved, we can take off the inheritances and it goes back into its normal state. Let's just toggle setup mode to make sure there's nothing moving, everything's okay. So that's great. We have this part sorted out. And now let's try moving our joints, okay? So right now, our joints are part of the main rig. I'm just gonna take the root of everything, which is the hip, and I'm gonna move it directly to the spine joints hierarchy. And it looks like it worked right off the bat. So let's get out of setup mode, and everything looks fine. So let's see what happens if I take my torso group and I move that around. Yeah, I can see that the character is starting to move as a unit. Of course, the IK controls are not, which is what we would want. The IK controls are never supposed to come for the ride. But the clavicles are not moving at all. These guys are not following. So let's see what's up with them. We have these two controls that are here on the FK controls folder that we have. Well, I'm calling the folders, they're group locators. So we have these two control objects that also have other things under them. And we have this the clavicle attach end on the left, and this one on the right that is actually not properly renamed. Let's do that. Locator right clavicle attach end. Much better. So we need to figure out what to do with these two objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. Let's see, right now they're under the controls FK, which is a group locator right here at the center of the world, which means we're going to have to deal with a little offset there once we move them. So let's see how that's going to work out. We're going to go to our group torso object again, and we're going to create we can actually use the same hierarchy here, spine controls, to move these two guys into it. So let's do that. Let's go back to setup mode, take these two guys, move them into that folder, and now that they're there, let's see what the transforms are. Yeah, we have a few values here, so we can just zero everything and they go back to normal. So let's see how things are looking now. If I take my torso control again and move it, now our rig is moving properly. Like, we have the entire character moving now. Which means that if I take our ace character over here, I can move him around and position him anywhere in the scene. There's still a few things we're going to look into, but we're going to get into those in a second. We have some IK controls left over here. So let's see what this is. Parent IK clavicle. We definitely don't want these guys just lying around in there. So I'm actually going to get the entire folder, and I'm going to move it under the torso group. There you go. And let's rename this. It's not ace anymore, it's just a group, and we're gonna call him spine controls IK, and let's just remove the color. Well, it's not working on my files anymore, but perfect. So let's make sure that we don't have anything else left that we would need. Our guide rig, that stays there, the geometry stays there, and actually these guys, I think it's time we move them into the ace character hierarchy too. So there you go. We have a texture group. Let's move him too. It's going to be part of our character. So we only have the main rig and controls of K group locators that we don't need anymore because they're empty. So we could just take them and delete them. And now we have a fully modular character in a single hierarchy. The one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add another object here that we can use to move the character around. So if we look at these guys, some of our IK controls, let's find him. This IK control is part of this group locator, the leg IK controls. So all this moves with our character object. I'm going to add another locator that I'm going to parent to this guy because in some cases you might want to have two of these sort of global controls for the rig, in case one is actually your asset that you will bring into the scene, and the second one you can actually use it to move and put your character in the scene where it belongs. So I'm going to create a new locator so that we have both, and we're going to call this one control center, just because it's going to be in the center of the character, affecting everything. We're going to call him global ace. Okay. And actually, you know what? We're going to do the opposite. Since everything is already parented to this guy, I'm just going to do that with him. So let's just call this guy character for now. And we're going to call this locator control center global ace. And this one is going to be character ace. And we're going to take this guy and put him under character ace. So there we are. And we're going to change their display attributes, of course. So we're going to take the global ace control, and we're going to turn him into a plane, like so, so that it's easier to distinguish. And we're going to make this guy into a circle the way we had it before. So circle and Y, and I'm going to make him bigger, so it sits on the outside, like so. Perfect. So now we have our complete character hierarchy. There's still a few things that we need to take care of that might not be obvious at this time, but I'm going to show them to you in the next video, and it's related mostly to character scaling. So I'll see you over there. Okay, we're almost done with the rig for the character, so we can move over to looking at the deformations for it, which is going to involve another rig, but we'll get into that. But before moving on, I want to make sure that my character is actually working properly and everything is ready for me to continue working. So let's make sure things here make sense. Let's give this guy gray color, just like all the other groups. Let's rename him to group. We don't need to specify center. Actually, we can just leave it as group guide rig, age geometry, texture group, weight containers. So everything is okay. Our guide rig is there. The geometry is there. Perfect. And let's try checking that our character scale still works. We have already rigged this to the torso of the character, which was a very important part to take care of. You remember, if we go to our spine rig workspace, you will remember that we had the global ace control, which is, well, what now is the global ace control, which is this guy, wired to all the path constraints on the neck and the torso, so that the scale of the character would be taken into account. So we can test that out by scaling the character like so. Everything works fine. And actually, to make sure that the character can only be uniformly scaled, I'm going to take the X and Z channels and wire them from the Y channels. So that way, now I only have one axis that controls the scale of the entire character. So that's good. There's one thing though that you might notice could happen sometimes, and it's that let's make the character really small so you can see what I'm talking about. If I zoom in, you will see this. What is this? Well, those are the leg FK controls that are not scaling with the character for some reason. So what I'm going to do is going to fix that really quickly right here in the leg workspace that we've been using. So let's go to our leg rigs, and I'm going to get rid of the extra items list for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rig this directly into the display properties of the object itself before I go on a witch hunt to see why the scale is not happening here. It could be due to the parent dynamic constraints and stuff like that, but I'm just going to wire the display properties onto this so you can see how we can solve this problem in a different way. So I'm going to do that for the entire hierarchy. So let's find them. Here they are. It's all these guys. So let's make sure we get nothing selected because our workspace was selected. That's why those nodes were green. So let's select everything in here for these guys. Right click and add. We're going to add the display property channels. If you go to locator shapes, let's bring this up. We need the width and the height settings for all these joints. So let's add those. Add channel. Width and height. Oh, I didn't have the others selected. Let's do that again. Add channel, width, and height. Okay, now they are. So let's give all this a little bit of space here. There you go. So now we have these properties. What we're going to do is wire them to our object here. Let's add him to the schematic view. And we're going to add the Y scale channel. There you go. And we're going to wire them to all the width and height properties. But if I want to keep their current settings, I have to first put them in a different node that I'm going to multiply by that scale. Okay, so we're going to need 2 of these, and as you know, well, since we're going to be multiplying, so I'm going to go for math, multiply nodes. So we're going to need 2 of these per joint. So let's duplicate these 2 over here. Then these 2 over here. Then these 2 for this guy. Then 2 for our next friend over there. And 2 for the last one. Okay, and now we're going to store in them the values that we're going to be using. Let's move these guys up a little bit for each joint. So let's see. This guy is using 173 millimeters, so we're going to write that down over here. This guy has to be 0.173 because it's millimeters. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem there. And let's wire him right there. Right now, you will see that the joint goes completely flat, and it's because this value is being multiplied by 0 right now. So you can just go ahead and wire the Y scale onto these 2 guys so you can see what's going on with our first joint. And then the height is 144. So we go on to this guy, 0.144, and wire that to the height of the joint. And now we have a joint that looks perfectly okay. Let's try scaling our friend up, friend down. Yeah, remains pretty constant in relation to the scale of the rest of the character. So let's do the others, shall we? I'll try to be as quick as possible about this. So let's get cracking. 160 for the width on this guy. So 0.160 and 151 for the next value. Wire Y to the other 2 channels and wire them to their corresponding channel. Now we got 2 joints that look properly, look okay. They're being scaled properly according to the scale of the character. I'm gonna do just the rest of the leg, and then I'll pause and do the other leg so you can see the end result. So let's do this one quickly. 100, which for this guy is gonna be 0.1. And then 132. Okay, and we're gonna wire Y in there, and then these 2 guys. Good. Then we have over here 0.055. And 148. Okay, and I'm going to do very quickly the next one. 84.6. Okay, and the next one, same value. So we can use a single math node for that one. And that's it. So let's do just that. And let's wire Y onto him, and then him, and this guy, and wire the remaining display attributes, and that's it. Our leg looks okay. Obviously, if you later change your mind around the size of these controls, you have to come in here to the schematic and change the values right there on the nodes, because the display properties for these guys are not going to be available anymore. As you can see, they're being controlled by something else, so you cannot edit that channel. That's the thing with how it's being rigged right now. So to do the other leg, of course, I have to do the same with these other joints over here. So I'm gonna drag this guy over, and I'm gonna do that very quickly, and I'm gonna come back as soon as it's done, so you can just check it out. See you in 1 second. Okay, I'm back. I'm done with the rigging of the display properties. You can see that both legs are looking okay now. And actually, I took a little bit of a different approach at the way I was going to do it. I realized that because both legs are symmetrical, well, I had already set the correct sizes for one leg, so I just reused them on the other side. So for example, these two values right here that I used for the thigh over here, as you can see, they're connecting to the thigh width and the thigh height. I also reused them for the other thigh's width and height, so they're using exactly the same values. So I don't need to create more extra math nodes for the other leg. I just reused the ones that I had. I just made sure that I was using the same for the thigh on one side, and on the other side, same for the calf, the foot. Just use the correct ones, and as you can see, our character looks perfectly fine. So now I can scale him, and everything looks okay. So let's set it back to 100 over here, and let's finish off the work that we're doing to clean up our character. I'm gonna make sure that there's nothing visible in the viewports that the animator does not need to deal with, and for that I'm gonna go back to my groups and go to the hidden group and hide it. So let's see what we got here. I guess we could leave it like this. We have the attach points over here, but I guess I'm gonna leave those visible just for the animator to be aware of where things are attaching the various rigs on the character. And also because from a pipeline perspective, if you ever went in a direction where you want to develop a tool that will allow you to exchange limbs on a character from a library of limbs, for example, it would come in very handy to have the attach points visible, so that you can bring in one limb, take an existing one, detach it, knowing where the connections are, and then attach the new one without having to really unhide the hidden group. So let's leave that there. I think this guy's not supposed to be here. Let's see who he is. Yeah, he's an up vector for the spine joint. We don't need him, so let's add him to the invisible group. And I see a few things here on the knees, so let's see what this is. It's a joint. Okay, that's a joint. We don't need to worry about these guys. It's for the FK leg. So I could actually get rid of that, of the display of the actual joint. So let's see. Select this guy, the locator shape. No, not him. Him. Yes, there you go. Let's change this from add to replace, and now he should be gone. Well, he is not. We're seeing the axes for some reason, and it might have to do with the wiring of the display properties. To be very honest, this is not something that I'm really concerned about. I'm just going to make sure everything has replace in here. And I'm going to leave it like that. So, is my scale still 100%? Yes, it is. Looks like the rest is okay. What is this? We have a couple of locators here. Let's see who these guys are. It's a constraint. Hips control. Yeah, definitely no need for these to be visible. So add to the hidden group. And we're going to do the same for him. It's another constraint object. Oh, I didn't actually add it. I selected it. Add item. There you go. And now him. Add item. There you go. And let's see. Who are you? Another up vector for the neck. Add them. And we should be good to go. This guy, he is rig FK spine end. And this is rig FK spine start. We don't need these guys because these are only used for the deformation of our spine. So let's add those two. And it looks clean enough. Looks like we're good. So you might want to spend a little bit of time on your rig checking that everything is okay, and also making sure that all your names are clear and everything is properly named, obviously. You don't want to deal later on with complicated rigs that where the names are not obvious. I'm pretty sure that by now that has become pretty evident. So let's stop right here, and let's say that we are done with all the rigging part of the character. And, well, we are about to move on to the deformations stage of our character, but for us to prepare to actually skin our mesh and have our character deform and all that, there's a few extra things that we need to add to our rig. We have to add a deformations rig that is going to have 2 layers built into it. And one is a procedural rig that will allow us to have very smooth deformations along the joints of our character. And the second rig will be a duplicate of that one that is going to be constrained, and is the one that is going to be actually being used by the binding tools to deform the character. And we're separating them because they perform different functions, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next videos. So I think we can close this chapter and move on to skinning and deformations.